Hello again, Year 6. This is our second Titanic-themed music lesson, following on from last week's lesson where we looked at the bravery of the band that continued to play as the ship sank and was led by Wallace Hartley. A big thank you to everyone who sent me their thoughts on the bravery of the musicians. This week I'm going to share your comments back with you, look at a few more facts about what happened to the band in those final minutes of the ship sinking, and then ask a few questions about the role that they played in helping save people's lives. I will also be setting you a new musical challenge this week to look at other musical heroes from history, and I will be detailing what I want you to do with that at the end of the video. Here we go then. Let's start with a quick recap of what we learnt in the last video. When the Titanic sank in the early hours of the 15th of April 1912, it took about 2 hours 40 minutes for the ship to go down, and for most of that time the ship's 8-piece band, led by its leader Wallace Hartley, played music to the passengers in an attempt to keep them calm and prevent widespread panic. It is generally believed the last piece they played was the hymn Nearer My God to Thee, but we can never be sure of that, and the exact last piece that they played is not really the most important thing. What is important is the fact that they played for so long and until almost the very end, sacrificing their own chances to escape. For many people, the band are considered real heroes who sacrifice their own lives to help other people survive instead of them. We can't argue with the fact that they were very brave to keep playing in this way and they were very heroic, but history is shaped by people's opinions about events, and so we can ask the question whether it was the right thing for them to have done and whether they should have tried to save themselves or even help in a different way. It's always good not just to accept facts that are given to us, but to really challenge those facts and discuss them. So let's look at your views on this, and then I'll talk about a few other parts of the Titanic story that I think we need to consider here. First of all, we've got a couple of comments here from Connor and Neve. Connor wrote, "I think the 8 musicians were brave for playing to the end, and maybe they did this to try and calm people down and to reassure them it was going to be okay, so I think they were heroes." And Neve wrote, "I thought the band were brave as they didn't just rush to a lifeboat, they helped, or tried, to calm down passengers when they were running about." From Mrs. Reeves we had, "The band were incredibly brave and selfless because even though they must have been terrified themselves, they kept playing music to keep everyone calm and give them reassurances in the final moments of the ship sinking." And from Ellie, "I think the band were brave because they put other lives first instead of saving their own lives. I think they were also helping children because the children didn't really understand. Also, in the background of the clip, there were no more boats, so maybe they wanted to do something they loved last in their lives, as they knew they were going to die anyway." I've got a couple of different views here from Cole and Natalia, who are a little bit more critical of what the band chose to do. Cole wrote, "They didn't help anyone, they just played music, that's it. If I was them, I would have jumped in the water because I would have died anyway." And Natalia wrote, "I don't think they were heroes because they didn't help people, they were in the way, but they knew it would be their last time playing, so they made the most of it." So 2 thoughtful and different views there. Belle wrote, "I think that the band were so brave and were so selfless because they wanted everyone to remain calm so everyone could reach safety. They are absolute heroes. They sacrificed their lives and their futures even though their wives, kids and families were waiting at home." And also from Sky, "I think that it was quite supportive how the people who were in the band sacrificed their own lives to save others around them and how they played calming music when the Titanic sank, trying to get people to remain calm. It is also quite sad how the people who were in the band sacrificed their own lives just to save other people's lives." A really thoughtful one there from Sky, thank you. Mrs. Lineker wrote, "The band played music to the end in order to maintain calm. The 8 musicians gallantly performed on deck whilst the passengers lined up for lifeboats. I think they were exceedingly brave young men, and they deserve all the admiration that they now get." And Miss Davison also wrote, "I always find the part where the band play Nearer My God to Thee as the Titanic sinks moving, as the musicians demonstrated great kindness, perseverance and courage in a difficult situation when others were in need. They show how doing something you enjoy and working as a team can help people prepare and cope with loss." A really thoughtful comment there, thank you Miss Davison. And 2 more from Hanny and Jean. Hanny wrote, "I think the band were brave as they helped the passengers get to safety while sacrificing their own lives." And Jean added, "I think what the band did was extremely brave of them. To risk their lives in order to help others is incredibly selfless." And finally, from Ishmael and Mrs. Gospel, we have 2 slightly different viewpoints, which we'll explore further in just a moment. Ishmael wrote, "They were heroes because they were selfless and calmed people down, but they should have tried to save themselves." And Mrs. Gospel added to that, "I thought they were wrong as they should have been helping guide people to the lifeboats," which is a really interesting viewpoint. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. A big thank you to everyone who sent in your comments, some really thoughtful responses there. One or two people might have sent their comments in after I've already created this video. So what I'm going to do, if I get any more comments come in from now on, I'm going to put them in the video description to this video so you can see what other people said as well. So we have some really thoughtful responses there. Most of you agree completely that the band were very brave. There were also some interesting thoughts there from some of you about how the band loved playing music, so wanted to do what they loved until the very end. I really liked that idea. But we must also remember how they were trying to use their music to keep everyone calm in what must have been one of the most terrifying experiences of their lives. Miss Gospel raised the point there at the end that perhaps their efforts would have been better spent helping passengers get into the lifeboats. Now I think there were plenty of other crew members doing that job, but it's certainly an interesting point, and maybe all the crew on the ship should have been focused on filling the lifeboats as quickly as possible instead of just trying to keep everyone calm. If we look again at the clip from the 1997 film with the band calmly playing, we see that the music is part of a wider attempt by the crew to keep everyone calm and stop everyone panicking blindly. Historical accounts generally agree that the crew tried to keep everyone calm, and not all the passengers were told straight away even that the ship was sinking. To an extent, this is a natural and sensible precaution, because if everyone had just panicked, then maybe even more people would have died. But if we look for a minute at some numbers about the Titanic, we see some alarming facts about the numbers who survived. The biggest problem was that there were never enough lifeboats for all the passengers. There were 20 lifeboats on board the Titanic, which was enough for about 1,200 people. But there were about 2,200 people on board the Titanic, so there were only enough lifeboats for about half of those. Now, nearly all the lifeboats were launched, so the crew should have been able to rescue the 1,200 people that would have fitted into those lifeboats. They knew they didn't have enough room for everyone, which is why the crew focused on women and children first, as we can see in this clip again from the film.
We are one out and ready, sir. Hadn't we better get the women and children into the boat, sir? Yes. Sir? Women and children first. Yes.
But actually, if we look at the number of survivors, there were only 700 people rescued from the Titanic when there was space on the lifeboats for 1,200, as we've discussed. So why is it that 500 people who could have been saved were not? The crew had time to launch all the lifeboats, but many of them were only partially filled, and so more people died that night than had to. Now we must be very careful not to be too critical here. We were not there, we've got no idea really what it was like on that night. And I'm not suggesting the crew did not do their very best to save as many passengers as they could. But it takes us back to Miss Gospel's point that maybe the band should have helped get people into the lifeboats, or even just save themselves, like Ishmael said, if they had the chance, as there was clearly space on the lifeboats for more people. Yet I think this view misses one important factor, and that is just how much panic there already was that night. When we say that the band played on to keep people calm, that doesn't mean everyone was calm. Everyone was already panicking, and there was already chaos all over the ship, as we can see clearly in this clip from the film as well. Now this probably explains why the lifeboats were not filled properly. All the crew would have been terrified and were doing the very best they could to get the lifeboats launched before the ship sank. Everyone was panicking, they had a limited amount of time, and it was a terrible situation. Which then takes us back to the band, and the fact that despite all the panic around them, they played on to try and help keep people calm. They could see it all falling apart around them, but they still played on heroically and bravely just to try and help. They could even see half-empty lifeboats that they could have got into, but they chose not to, and they chose to play on until the very end. Now, none of the band survived, so we can't possibly know what their final thoughts were and why they made that decision to play on, but we owe it to their sacrifice to remember their bravery and remember them as true heroes. So your homework this week, everyone, is to look at musical heroes in history. I have found this website that has a list of different musicians who have been heroic in different ways and for different reasons. I will put the link to the website in the video description for you. I would like you all to choose one of the people on this page, find out a little bit about them, and then send me a paragraph about why that person was a hero. I look forward to getting all of your answers. Thank you, everyone. Do take care and stay safe.